We'll be speaking today about the vice presidents who assumed the nation's highest office when the men that they served under were unable to complete their terms. Think. We will start with the 10th president, John Tyler. When William Henry Harrison was inaugurated, he was relatively old, at age 68, and the former hero of the Indian Wars was self-conscious about appearing vigorous. He paraded for 2 hours on horseback in cold rain during the inaugural celebrations, then took off his hat to take the oath of office. As a result, Harrison caught a cold, which developed into pneumonia and pleurisy, and led to his premature death, after only 32 days as president. John Tyler, the first person to assume the presidency on the death of his predecessor, was mocked mercilessly in the press as his Accidency. He was also the first president against whom impeachment hearings were brought for alleged misuse of the veto power. And he was the father of 16 children, the most of any president. He served 1 term. Click. Lucky 13, Millard Fillmore. Zachary Taylor died in office 5 days after a deadly 4th of July celebration, where he was exposed to cholera, got sunstroke, and perhaps food poisoning too. It's unclear which of these maladies killed him. He was attending a ceremony at the time to lay the cornerstone of the Washington Monument. Millard Fillmore served Taylor's remaining 3 years. He was the last member of the Whig Party to hold the office of president, and when that party fell apart, he refused to join the Republicans. He ran for president again on a third-party ticket, the American Party, also known as the Know-Nothing Party, but did not get the nomination. Click. Number 17, Andrew Johnson. Abraham Lincoln was assassinated while attending a second-rate play at Ford's Theater. The conspirators originally intended to kill Andrew Johnson too, but George Atzerodt lost his nerve and backed out at the last minute. Johnson never attended school, and his literacy skills were notoriously poor. He too endured impeachment proceedings when he removed a cabinet minister, the Secretary of War, without the consent of Congress. His job was saved by a single congressional vote. He served 1 term. Click. President 21, Chester A. Arthur. Poor James Garfield. He lasted a mere 4 months as president and was shot twice by a disgruntled office seeker while waiting for a train. The Baltimore and Potomac Railroad Station was then located at 6th Street and Constitution Avenue Northwest, where the National Gallery of Art West Building now stands. Garfield was shot at point-blank range by Charles Guiteau and suffered in extreme pain for 80 days. He finally succumbed to loss of blood and his doctors' misguided and repeated probates of his wound, and Chester Arthur stepped in. He served 1 term. Click. The 26th president, Theodore Roosevelt. William McKinley had just given a speech at the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo, New York, and was shaking hands with admirers in a receiving line. When he got to the front of the line, an anarchist, Leon Czolgosz, shouted, "William McKinley is an enemy of good working people," and shot him with a revolver hidden in a handkerchief. McKinley died 8 days later, and Theodore Roosevelt succeeded him, becoming the youngest president at that time, at age 42. He was the first of only 3 accidental presidents to actually run for the office successfully after serving out his predecessor's term. Click. Number 30, Calvin Coolidge. Although it was widely rumored at the time that Warren G. Harding had been poisoned, perhaps by his own wife, it is now believed that his death was caused by congestive heart failure. But Florence Harding refused an autopsy, promptly burned all of her husband's personal correspondence and other papers, and this fueled the speculations. Calvin Coolidge had to put up with Florence for his first month in office until she finally vacated the White House and returned to her home in Ohio. Coolidge was famously tight-lipped, especially when placed in contrast to his vivacious wife, Grace. He served 2 terms. Click. The 33rd president, Harry S. Truman. Truman had only been vice president for 82 days when Franklin Delano Roosevelt declared, "I have a terrific pain in my head," and died of a cerebral hemorrhage. During their brief time together in office, they had met exactly twice. Truman is remembered for ordering the use of atomic bombs against Japan. He kept a sign on his desk that said, "The buck stops here," and in his memoirs he wrote, "To be president of the United States is to be lonely, very lonely at times of great decisions." He served only 1 term. Click. Number 36, Lyndon B Johnson. Did Lee Harvey Oswald act alone? Should the findings of the Warren Commission be believed? John F. Kennedy was shot in a motorcade driving through Dallas in a convertible. Lyndon B Johnson flew to Dallas on Air Force 2 and flew back to DC on Air Force 1. He took the oath of office midair. He served 2 terms. Click. President 38, Gerald Ford. When Richard M. Nixon became the first president to resign while in office, Gerald Ford became the first to succeed to the presidency while his predecessor was still alive. Since Nixon's elected vice president, Spiro Agnew, had resigned earlier in a bribery scandal, Ford was an appointed rather than an elected vice president. He became our only unelected president. He pardoned Nixon and lasted just 1 term. Thank you.